Victoria, very good to have you on here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for asking me.
Right off the gate here, I read that you're from a musical family. Is this right?
This is right. That's true.
Uh, Looking back on it now, do you feel like you would have formed the same connection with music whether you were from a musical family or not? Do you think that that was just inevitable?
That's a good question. I think it was definitely fostered and nurtured, but I think I mean, it's hard to say like what's genetics, you know what I mean? How much is genetics a part of your personality or like a part of whatever it is that you are more interested in? Um, but it's definitely in there in the sense that like it goes back generations. On my dad's side to my family in Iraq. So it's like goes back and back and back and of course my dad like nurtured it. So yeah.
Do you feel like you are doing most of the nurturing with this connection with music now?
Well, my project is largely based on me. Um and kind of what it is that I have that I kind of want to do in that sense, but I do bring in collaborators. Um and I think music has always for me been inner driven first, and then that connection is brought outwards and then nurtured by whatever environment forms around it. Yeah.
What was the first instrument you picked up? I understand that you're a multi-instrumentalist, but what was the first instrument?
Guitar. Yeah. So I started playing guitar when I was 11. And actually, I mean, I did start piano lessons when I was like 9, but I only had like a month's worth. So I wouldn't, it was just not, I guess it just didn't resonate at that point. But um, yeah, guitar, I picked up when I was 11, electric guitar, um, you know,
Right.
yeah.
After picking up the guitar, did that kind of set you on the course of picking up different instruments later on?
Yeah, once I realized that, everything is just about like the physicality of playing the other instruments and once I kind of realized that all music is the same, when you realize that it's made up of the same parts essentially. And you learn that foundation, you know, and you have some physicality or some understanding of that around other instruments. I think you could just do that. It's not that hard to kind of do it and know that you're doing it, what it is that you're doing.
I've heard other musicians who are versed in playing different instruments that whatever the first instrument they picked up informs the way that they play or attach themselves to different instruments. Has that been the case for you with guitar? Are you picking up
No,
different instruments in the mindset of playing guitar?
no, definitely not. Definitely not. I actually use other instruments to expand the way that I see um, music, right? So if it's clarinet, then you need to think melodically, but you can also combine that with thinking harmonically, right? If you're like versed in a certain way of playing piano or a certain way of like composing harmony, you can what I like to do is I like to take tools and ways of thinking on other instruments and apply them to the other ones, right? So maybe thinking really melodically on piano, or if I wanted to do something like on my last record, there's like a on the last track there's like a pan flute kind of thing that's it's like a little pan flute mini orchestra where there's like 9 parts on it. But, I don't know how pan flautists think necessarily, but, I knew what I wanted, and I kind of, um, was like, "I think the pan flute is right for that." I don't know why, but I think it's right.
What instrument has had the most influence on you?
Gosh, that's so hard to say. Right now right now, probably the piano. Right now, it's the piano. I mean, it just rotates. I'm so malleable and adaptable, I think, to the environment musically that it's not like there's nothing rigid about the way about me in the sense that, like, I form a certain habit, and around that habit comes music. It's like I want to imagine something um, and then reform all my habits around my imagination. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is that difficult to do?
Yeah, it is.
Do you
It's
have
you
a
have
process of how to get it done now, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first it's just quieting down for me. It's a big part of it. Quieting down the habits and really being precise with what it is that I want in my imagination and having that lead and kind of being disciplined and not um veering off the that
course?
yeah, that course, no matter what might kind of come up and distract me, like, "Oh, well, there was this pattern that I saw on this, and then maybe that would work." Like, there's no thinking involved, like, it's a very rigorous practice of not thinking.
Is Are the habits that you are breaking and trying to form new ones, do those ones in turn have to be broken at some point to develop a new one?
Yes. Yeah, and, I don't know, it's like, we'll see eventually. I don't know where that kind of thinking necessarily takes you, if you keep doing that, but I do keep doing that because it's what I find most fun, and even though it's kind of the hardest approach that I've found, it's definitely the most fulfilling.
Has being able to play multiple instruments deepened your connection with music just in the grand scheme?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, it just gives you different perspectives, and then if you wanna start writing for other instruments that say it's not me playing it, but an actual instrumentalist, like, you do have to realize, like, places to breathe and if you're writing for wind or something or different, I don't know, there's just different things that you have to keep in mind and, like, yeah, it's definitely deepened my connection with it. I don't really feel separate from that, though. It's almost hard to say that because I just don't feel separate from it,
Separate
which
from the instrument, or
from, like, my musical connection, right? It's hard to say because I feel that it's just very intrinsic to how I was brought up, and it's deeply, integrated, I
Mhm.
guess I would say.
You were a session musician for about 10-ish years, right?
Yeah,
Did I get that correct?
yeah.
What was that like? What was the process of being in those shoes like for you?
That was, honestly, in the beginning, it was really fun. I liked it, and it was cool to play a lot of different music, like, at the same time, right? So you would just be in different projects, and there was, and they all had their own kind of hive mind, and you could kind of I could kind of plug into whatever that was. Um, And then it just became a bit of a burden in the sense that, like going back to the habits, you start to internalize kind of certain things that aren't true to what you want to be playing or what you want to be connected to necessarily. And that was a whole process of breaking that down. And then came my love of breaking down habits.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really fun. Um, it's always good to have like a community around that. And usually I would always be with really fun, like just like good natured people. So that's, I mean, who doesn't love that, you know? Who
Me.
doesn't love who's like, oh, you?
No, no. Um, did working in that capacity help your mind move in different directions, in relation to music? Something that maybe these habits that you're breaking and forming again are kind of based off of, at least in some of a sense?
Yes, definitely. Definitely moving in different directions. And sometimes it was good and like expansive. And sometimes it just felt like a bit disjointed because I'd be like, this is not, doesn't feel right, kind of in my, doesn't feel right, doesn't sound right coming out of me, you know? Um, but
Is
some
is that
people
is
are,
that feeling instant though? Is it instantly there that you go, "This is not it," or whatever it may be?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Normally, if it's a no, it's always pretty automatic. If it's something that I need to get used to, it's always more of a question mark feeling like, oh, like this is new ground. Cool. Wow. Explore that a bit. It's more like interesting. Let's see what's happening. But if it's a no, it's just a no. And you just don't need to open your mind too much to that.
Mhm. I read that you became disillusioned by the pop music,
Yeah.
apparatus after, touring with Taylor Swift. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Was it something that was it just immediate that you're like, "This is it? This is about a as much as I could do with this?"
It was just that it wasn't so much immediate because I also do like to have a level of like professionalism where it feels like I could just show up and do the job, you know? Just show up and do the job and do what you can do and kind of focus on that. And but then it just became not for me in the sense that it's a bit it's not the reason why I started playing music. It's like exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite feeling and the opposite experience that I would want playing with anybody.
Was that a question mark feeling in the beginning, or did you know off the jump that it was not
It's
gonna
such
be?
a it's such a different um it's such a different experience that I was like, this is completely new. I don't know. I don't have a reference point to this, but this feels completely weird and new. So it was more like, okay, see, what is this like? Okay, this is a different world. What is this world kind of like? What are the parts of the world? What is it composed of? Um, and is there anything nourishing in it, or is there anything besides the money that is going to keep me here? It just turns out to be a hard no.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
Did you go from touring with her straight into this current project that you're working on?
No, no. So I moved away for a little bit and took a break from music. And I was living in Big Sur for about like a year and a half. which was so good and really it's just a really good move on my part, just because I had to, like, refocus and see what was okay, well, I've done this for 10 years. What do I wanna keep from it? And what do I wanna not wait, how have I what works for me and what doesn't work for me? Like, what is it now that I want, now that I know and I can refine that basically?
Was there more shedding than keeping in that process?
There was a lot of shedding. There was definitely a lot of shedding. I think the keeping is it's more passive, right? Because it's not like you don't have to try to keep something that you love. You just kind of keep going to it. Um, and it's more of like the kind of letting go of the different frustrations that can come up when you find yourself going to something musically all the time that's not authentic, and you just have to stop and then try again, but like actively stop and kind of just unwind that a bit. But there was certainly a lot that I kept and a lot of like tricks and things that I found through the years that were really great and I still use.
And did you, after that stint in Big Sur, did you wind up moving towards working on your own project?
So I lived in Big Sur, then I decided to come back to LA and came back in I think 2017. Then I started doing Alexander technique training, which is like a postural training kind of like unwinding thing for musicians, um, and actors and performers, like anyone actually. But I think it was developed by an actor, so I started doing that pretty seriously. And about 9 months into that training, um, actually, so I'll back up a little bit. 2019, I saw a documentary that just kind of stayed with me about basically about what my project is about, and then 2020 happened, and the pandemic obviously hit, and I just like the kind of furniture and landscape of this documentary stayed with me in a really big way, where I just kind of kept going to it in my imagination and being like, oh, man, I could score that. And just started writing, but not intentionally in that. And then I figured out I'd done something, I'd made like a loop. And I was like, man, this is so cool. What is that? And I was like, oh wow, that's inspired by this documentary. And then 2020 happened and I just decided, okay, well, I guess the score is coming out now. Like my imagined score for this. And that's the project.
Now, do I have the pronunciation of this right? Floreana
Floreana, yeah.
or
Yeah.
Floreana. Was working on your own project like this, was that always the goal? Was that always part of the end game?
No, I don't think so. I don't I don't think so. Of course I did want to find something that I wanted to work on that kept resonating, but I wasn't sure if that would come from me or like I was open to it coming from somewhere else too.
Could you have felt the admiration or wow, I did something with working with somebody else in the same capacity?
Yeah, if it was fulfilling in that way, definitely.
Where did the name for this come from?
So the name is an island off the Galapagos archipelago. So one of the islands is called Floreana, and the documentary happens on that island. The events in that documentary. It's a bit like, as far as the doc goes, it's a bit of like a exotica Hitchcock.
Mm, I see.
Yeah.
How long had you been working on the songs from Floriana 1 before it came out? How long had those been in production for?
It was a little slow going in the mixing process because I really wanted time to sit with them. But in terms of the recording process, I think it took like, and this was not like I had no expectation for it to even come out. I was just doing it because I wanted to. Um, it was so that's to say that I wasn't like pushing it or like trying to get something done or trying to do anything. I was just bored at home, and wanted to like have a project to work on. Um, so I think the recording process was a year and a half, like a year and a half. And then mixing took a little bit of time because we would take long breaks and I would sit with it and just be like, is this the approach that I want to take mixing it, or is this the approach? Like, do I want it to be spatial, or do I want it to be like compressed and like a, little lo-fi package, like what do I, because it could be both things in a really cool way. So just going back and forth on that.
How did it wind up being what it is now, released to the public?
Well, through John Carroll Kirby, actually, who at the time we were spending a lot of time together before COVID and during COVID. And I asked him on one of his shoots for his music videos that I was in, and I was like, okay, so you've heard it. Like, who do you think would be good to mix it? Because it's not like normal music. Who do you think would be a good fit? And then he recommended Jake Beater at Stone's Throw, who is a legend, who I'd never met. And he's like, yeah, if you want, I could send him the track and see what he thinks about it. And I was like, yeah, great. He had no idea who I was, no, but he really liked the track. And then the rest of the project, and we just started working together. And that was a really fun process for me because after spending a lot of the time like solitary recording and writing and playing most everything on it, it was so fun to open it up to Jake and see what he thought, because I had just been in my own imagination for a while. And Jake did an amazing job. And I think like it's so fun because you just get to build this kind of like organic telepathy with the person, with a good mixing engineer, and he's brilliant. So like I could just look at him and he knew exactly what I wanted, like by the end of it, which is so cool.
Did your time working as a session musician kind of influence you to start bringing in people or being open to working with people on this
No,
project?
it wasn't really that. I'll tell you what it was to that made me want to open it up. It was that I had a community around me, and I still have a community around me that I love how they play. And it's like I wanted to write something so I could hear what one of them has to say on it. Like, I won't give direction unless it's, like, really they're like, "No, I really don't know what to do," which never happens because they kinda always know what to do. It's an amazing community that I love to work with, and I love to be open in that way, and I don't like to be micromanagey, with people I work with.
When you were in that situation working with other people as a session musician, did you like a little bit of a skeleton structure, we'll say, to a song? Like, this is kind of what I'm going for, but expand within this direction or this whatever, maybe
Yeah,
proximity.
yeah, I like that. I like that, and I like the opposite of that, but it's good, I think, for a session, especially if it's something more conventional, if someone just has a reference. But I feel like if it's unconventional and experimental, you can just and the vision is clear enough as it is musically, you can just let them and it can expand on its own. And if someone is sensitive enough, they'll be able to pick it up. Like I don't think you need to like necessarily be so explicit if you're choosing the right people.
Is is it openness or leaving the door at least a little bit open very important to a productive um, result within music, whether it be you organizing or you participating in.
Yeah, it's the best part for me somehow. I don't know why. It feels the most fulfilling to be subverted, to have your like will subverted in some way. And you're just like, oh shit, like I would have never, I would have never thought of that. That's the whole point of having another person is because they're like, they'll bring something out of you or you bring something out of them or they do something really amazing and unexpected in your world. And I think ideally, maybe in all relationships in general, not just musical relationships, but you want that thing. Like I want that thing from my friends that I don't really know what they're about to do, but I know that it's coming from a good place, and I know that I'll probably like it. But I don't know what it is,
Right.
you know?
I read that you try to find a connection to the feeling of a song and let everything unfold from there.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to find what the feeling of the song is? Is that ever the difficulty within constructing a new idea?
I think that when I was growing up, that's largely how I was working and how I would think about music, is I would get the whole kind of gestalt of the whatever it was that I was listening to, and it's saying something. There's always the collection of words in a sentence or the collection of notes in a piece. It just depends. There's different focal points of things, and when you just come back and you say, okay, well, why is this happening? Like, why is this person even doing this in the first place at all? Existentially, why is this being making this thing? It's quite weird, and but that's what I would think about sometimes, or a lot of the time actually when I was growing up, and then I would be like, oh, and kind of this feeling would emerge.
Have you ever asked whoever the artist was that you were wondering what it was, what the song was about that song, and you had a different interpretation of what the original
That's interesting.
jumping
I
off
don't
point was?
I don't think I've ever had that inclination, or like I've never actually asked. But the thing is that, like I said, it's more of a feeling tone than something that I could put into words, and probably someone more articulate could.
Mm. Does the feeling of a song change throughout the process of hashing it out?
Mm-mm.
That's still there. That's the grounding point.
Yeah. I think that it's made of different elements, and different elements can be highlighted um, in certain ways, or they can be muted in certain ways. But the kind of coordination of it of all of the pieces come together and give it a certain shape, whether whether this part is bigger or this part is bigger, or it's still the same shape, kind of. It's still the same thing. It's just a little bit like it's like people. God, I feel so funny like talking like this in an interview, but you asked. So, but it's just like people, I think people are made of different things. And people can be at any given moment 10 different contradicting or opposing or congruent emotions or states, but then it makes this bigger kind of feeling tone to that person in that moment. So if you were to stamp a moment and be like, what was present here and how big was everything here, versus 5 minutes after, it's like a little bit different. So you can make different versions of a person or a song, and they just kind of happen like that, but the person is still the person.
Right. Whoever's
Yeah,
contributing to it is coming from whatever the place was that they're coming from.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
What is the most difficult aspect of songwriting for you?
Wow. I want to say um, that's hard.
Yeah, I did put it on the back page here for a reason. I don't want to start off with a
Yeah,
with a hard one like that.
yeah, that's a
But
hard one.
would you say that it's that connection point with people, or kind of just getting influenced by something or something along
It's
those lines?
different. I think the challenges come with the songs, and they're all different challenges. Sometimes it might be like, where does it go from here? Does it go anywhere? Or is it more like a mantra? Because there's
Mm,
different kinds of songs. There's songs that just kind of cycle and cycle and cycle and grow and kind of build up this momentum. And then there's songs that subvert that, build it and then subvert the momentum or redirect it somewhere else. And then there are songs that are just these really neat little vignettes that are just compact and packaged and really nicely. It's like, well, for the different kinds of songs, there's different kinds of challenges.
mhm,
And like the way, I don't know what is the hardest thing to overcome, because sometimes for something it might be like, oh, you know what, it's harder to think in this way for this song. Like it's harder to find a B section to this, maybe because it doesn't have a B section. So that's why it's hard, because it's more of a mantra song. It's more cyclical,
mhm.
you know. Um
When are you at that impasse that you go, "Oh, this is just a mantra song?" Are you really trying to get blood from it before you call it?
yeah, yes,
Is
definitely.
is it just about borderline forcing something at that point is when it's available, or when that comes to into the equation?
I think effort is a really good thing to put into it. Um, Whether or not the effort is spent wisely doesn't actually, I don't even know if it really matters. Like the fact that I've done it and I've gone to the end of the store, like, I've touched the back of the store and I've been like, "Yeah, you know what? Like, let's scrap it." Like, yes, we did just spend 3 days on this, and by we, I mean me most of the time. But, like, um, sometimes I do talk to myself in that way, but it's just like, you just have to be willing to put that effort in and just be like, "It's okay because it's music. It's so fun." You know? And maybe that will be something else, which has totally happened.
Will you put something that has been worked through on the back burner, when it gets to a certain point that you're like, "There is something here, I just don't know what it is?"
100%,
Mhm.
100%.
When you pick it back up or return to it to just even look over it, are you coming at it with a different mindset entirely, or are you trying to tap into where you were when that initial spark came?
Depends. It depends. If it's something that's not that didn't really make it, it's because I probably didn't hear it right the first time. So, but if it's something that I just don't really understand, then I like to go back to the or no, sorry, if it's something that I just I forget the feeling of it, I like to just not listen and not think about it and just lay down and remember the feeling and then listen to it and be like, "Oh yeah, everything, here are the pieces. This is why it works because it's like this." Instead of instead of trying to hear it with completely new ears. And sometimes it's a balance, right? Sometimes it's both. You get a split where you're like, I'm going to completely immerse myself in the feeling, but as it stands in this moment, not
Hmm,
like I'm remembering something, but I'm just connecting back. I'm connecting to where that lives because it's still alive. I just have to make it louder in my own
right.
world.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's
Do
interesting.
you really? I feel like it's so crazy.
No,
I feel like
no, I do. I
yeah.
d I understand. I do get where you're coming from. That is an interesting way of looking at it. I feel like people have described it to me before, but not in that way. I think that's a
Yeah,
great way to say it.
yeah.
Um, how long does it take you to complete a song usually? I know that's a big circumstantial kind of question there, but are you usually a few months?
Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 1 day, and sometimes it's a month, and sometimes it's 3 months. The
It's
last one
always changing. Yeah.
is always changing. The last one that's gonna come out soon, in like a month from now, is gonna be that took I mean, it's easy because it was a cover, so it was pretty although it wasn't the easiest cover because it's like an instrumental and super wacky in the original, so it's like, well, where do you go with this? But
Mm,
the second that I started doing it, I just played it. I just learned the chords, I learned the melody, and I just played it on different instruments and was like, "I don't know, but I like this one. I'm just gonna trust what it is that I like here." And not kinda try to fit anything together and just kinda throw things at the wall, and the next day I came back and actually, the next day, my brother was visiting because I wasn't here. I was overseas, and my brother was visiting, and he's a musician too. And we went to the studio, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to sound like, just FYI, but like this is what I did yesterday. And he's like, this is crazy. This is crazy. Somehow it works, but I don't get it. Like, and I was like, yeah, somehow it does work. So that took 2 days.
mm. But
Yeah.
in other cases, it could be a different,
And
time
I had
frame.
no idea it was gonna take 2 days because, like I said, when I first started approaching it, I was like, "I don't know. This is so weird. How am I gonna d I don't know how to do this." And then you just kinda do it,
Mhm.
not knowing the whole time.
Right. What was it about instrumental music that kinda drew you into that, genre, we'll say?
It's interesting. This week I've been thinking about that a little bit, and there was something about music with lyrics in it that didn't necessarily like it. Of course, it spoke to me, and I love all music, but recently I realized that I feel like it's where we're coming from. Um, there's so many people trying to tell you what to do about everything like in your life everywhere, like podcasts and like, just like
Yeah, those guys are the fucking worst. Yeah.
no. You're amazing. You're amazing, but you're not trying to tell people what to do. It's more like, everything is everywhere. Like all the advice is everywhere, all the hyperverbal is everywhere. We're hyperverbal now. We need to process everything. Nothing is left to just be what it is. It's just okay, well, we need to make sure, that we really process everything on the table. And I feel like we've been moving in that direction for good reason, right? Because there's like a kind of an unstable environment that we're heading into, with everything we have, with let's not get into it, but with World War
Now
Three.
let's get into it. This is the podcast to do that on. No, unstableness. Yeah. Um,
So you
is
got so
societal.
instrumental music.
Mm,
Why?
mhm.
Because it gives you space. It just gives you space to be like, what is it that I think? What is it that I think? Why do I want to do the things that I'm doing? It's a more reflective kind of music instead of declarative.
Is that has it always been what you get out of from other people's instrumentations?
Yeah, I think that I get a lot out of that. I get a lot out of instrumental music that is a more internal, um, can be a more internal exploration. And sometimes, it can feel less performative. So it feels a bit more authentic sometimes, although sometimes not, it just depends on how it's done. But for me, like that's just the way that I feel like I can express myself the best.
With exploring these different ideas within your songs, is it very difficult at times to express what a song is about or what you're trying to say through a song just through instrumentation?
I think there's just different languages that we often emphasize or de-emphasize as people. And I think everyone knows kind of the emotional or energetic landscape of things, but it's just not emphasized just because it's not verbal. Um, and I don't necessarily think that you have to like go on and say, oh, be explicit in what it is that you want to do or what it is that you want to say. Like, not every song needs to be like an explicitly political anti-war song or whatever. You know what I mean? Like and it can still have meaning, or an explicitly romantic, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. There's just there's a more primal version of that happens before words.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you like to listen to other people's music while working on your own music?
Sometimes, yeah.
Is it cast a wide net in that scenario?
It casts a wide net. I've been listening to a lot of classical music because I started studying again counterpoint with a teacher. So I studied when I was 20, and then now just recently moving back to the States, I started again, and it's just so fun. So I've been listening to a lot of um, classical music. Um, but also I mean, my dad's a jazz drummer, so jazz is just a part of my, that's more what I'm inclined towards, but I just love the order of classical music. And like, sometimes you can apply that order to looking at jazz, and then vice versa, and you kind of get this like really great connective tissue that starts kind of forming in my brain, at least, that's like everything is everything. um, and everything is an approach, and the purity of the approach can determine the purity of your approach in different contexts, can give you some really wild sounding shit, like Nina Simone, for example. Okay, Nina Simone, the purity of her approach. I mean, she was like a classical pianist that they didn't let go to conservatory because she was black. But there's no question that she's classical. There's just no question. And then you listen to some of her improvisations and you're like, damn, she just improvised this like really amazing counterpoint line, the whole time for, I don't know, for like 32 bars. And she never veered off that, and she just stuck with that, and it's like a jazz context, but if you look at what it is that she was actually playing, it's perfect in terms of like what all the rules are and what all the and so that's a really fun tool. That's like, so it's very it's like really stimulating to do that and to get new things from that.
Uh, when you're working on a song, do you like to just focus in on that one song until it's
Hmm.
completed, or do you like to jump around a bit when
I like
writing?
to jump. I like to jump around. I do. I think it's healthy for me to not get it's healthy for the song, actually, to not be so like, gotta finish this before I go to the next one. Although that's not necessarily what happened on the last record at all. That's like not at all what happened. It was every song came out in the order that it appears on the record, and it was like one song and the next song and the next song and the next song.
Was that intentional, or was that just did it just happen to be like that is actually the correct flow for this release?
Yeah, that was just what happened, and I was like, is this really what's happening? And that's just what was happening. It wasn't really intentional.
Do you think that if you had that intention, it would have came out the way it did? It would have had that same flow or energy behind it? Or is that
I,
something that is it just occurred without it without any energy being behind it?
there was no energy or intention behind that. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with reordering songs on a record.
Is there a certain, I mean, once you start playing with that, is there a certain like this is of course the way it's supposed to be. There's no other way it can be.
Yeah, for this one, it was pretty obvious that there was a beginning, middle, and end in the arc of how, even in the arc of how, like the feeling of the songs as I was writing them. Like in the process, there was a beginning, middle, and end. It wasn't like, let's go back here, let's go here, let's do this, or let's do something other than what we're doing. It didn't have any of that. It had like, this is what we're doing, and then we move to the next thing, and then we move to the next thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, the singles from this first release were Floreana and Black Lizard of the Surf, correct? Those are the two.
Hmm.
When did it become apparent you said these are the going to be the singles? Was it through looking at the track listing?
Um, I really liked Floreana, and like that was the first one that I recorded. And anytime I showed that to someone, even in its early stages when it was just kind of this loop that runs underneath everything, people were like, "This is so good. I could just like listen to this. Like we could just like, you know, just take whatever unsaid psychedelics and just have this on for hours. You know? And I was like, "Really? Okay, cool."
Mhm.
And then Black Lizards, actually my friend Curtis, Curtis Harding came over and he was like, "This one's dope. Like, you actually need to have Black Lizards be the one because," but I was like, "Is it too like Cuban or not Cuban, but is it too like, is it too much to be like, I don't know. I just don't know, but you just don't know. But other people know, kind
'Cause
of.
they're not as on top of it. They got kind of a
Yeah.
bird's eye view.
Yeah, exactly. They have the bird's eye view. Yeah.
Do you listen to music that is reminiscent of the music that you're making when you're making music? Or do you try to
Mhm.
keep a little bit of okay.
Sometimes.
Uh, do subjects outside of music, tend to influence you to compose new music, or is it more inspired by themes within music that kinda one hand washes the other in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean,
Or is it a mixture of both at different times?
it's a mixture of both, but it's generally things outside of music that inform my music. I don't know if it's a mixture of both, actually. I think it's just like life experience and internal experience that get to come out and be processed through music, but also that could be through the lens, like what was highlighted for me was this documentary that I saw. And like I said, I went to go live in Big Sur, and the documentary is called Satan Came to Eden. And it was about these kind of city slickers in the 30s who came from Germany. Yeah, no, for real. And then they're like, all kind of quirky and they came from Germany in the 30s and right before World War II. And they were like, you know what? It was the first wave of hippies. And they were like, you know what? No, we're going to go and live in the Galapagos on Floreana. And, 4 years later, there's like three German families on this completely unsettled island. And then, you know, 4 years later, after a series of events, turns out they didn't get along, and turns out that half of them went missing or were found dead. So, okay, you bring, wherever you are, kind of wherever you go, there you are, right?
Mhm.
And when I was in Big Sur, that was a big theme, right? Because there's a lot of people there, and I love the community there so much. But you would see these kind of transient people coming in and out, and it's like, where are you going? You're always there. You're always going to be there, and like you can't really run from that. You're just going to bring whatever you are into the environment, and that experience I metabolized pretty directly through watching this documentary. I was like, wow, that's far out. Look at that, that happens everywhere and it's happened forever.
Floreana 1 is the first of 3 installments, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are all these releases gonna be through Day End Records?
Yeah. Yes.
Right on. Will any of these releases feature any vocals, or is it strictly instrumentation?
There are vocals actually. I do some singing on the second track, but it's more singing as an instrument.
Mhm.
It's not really like lyrics. There was a poetry thing on it that I did ask my friend to do, but it just didn't really work. It just, in the end, unfortunately, it didn't work. So I had to cut it. But you never know. I really do like spoken word. It would be amazing if there was like a modern day authentic like Eden Abez around that I could find, and he could just like, have, write something and say it beautifully. but
Mhm.
but it's hard. Spoken is hard.
Just
And I
as instrumentation is, I mean, you're kinda working
yeah,
with the polar opposites in this direction, right? Just instrumentation
totally,
and then spoken
totally,
word, yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Will there be different collaborations, with other people with these next 2 releases?
Yes. Yeah, I'm really excited about them. Um, there is a lot of really, exciting different instrumentation that on the second one where I worked with a lot of, Arabic instruments and Arabic musicians, and there's, like, um that was really fun for me to incorporate that into it because I grew up on that as well, like I said, Middle Eastern, so, um, I'm excited to see how that, plays out, if people like that or if it speaks to them. So,
How do your folks feel about the music that you've been making since you come from a musical family, and your dad specifically being a jazz drummer and all?
my dad really likes it. He's actually on the record.
He is featured playing bongos on
Yeah.
one track, right?
Yeah, on the first track, on Floreana, he's playing bongos, and, he really likes it. Like, I knew he liked it because he didn't say anything when I played it. He just got the bongos and started playing.
I thought you were gonna say that he was part of the other people that were doing illicit substances saying that we could just listen to this. Victoria, I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this was so fun.
But before I let you go, I got some promo to do here.
Yeah,
Floriana 1 is out now through Day End Records. It is streaming everywhere, wherever people get their music, right? That's where they can find
that's
you.
right, everywhere.
And it is available for purchase at florianala.bandcamp.com. That's the best place, right? That or Day End Records
Yeah, I
Bandcamp.
think I think Day End Records, I have to look at my Bandcamp. I'm so bad at doing that stuff, but I have to look and then I can send it to you.
Okay.
Do it through Day End. That's the best way.
Day End it is then.
Yes.
Um, Floriana ___ on Instagram to stay up to date with news and shows and such. Are you planning to do some shows regarding these releases?
Yeah, I have one actually coming up in Greece, um, on the weekend of the 16th, I believe, on Sifnos at Logia. So it's a Greek island. So if anyone's in Greece, July 16th to
July
9th,
16th. What was it? Crete? What island is it on?
Sifnos,
Sifnos. Okay.
Sifnos, yeah,
Okay, so if anybody's in
in Greece,
Sifnos on
Sifnos.
the 16th, be sure to
Yeah,
stop by.
yeah. I'm playing with Eddie Chacon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right on. Well,
so we're gonna do a whole thing.
that's gonna be a great yeah, so just go ahead and fly out, I guess.
Yeah, go come.
If you're not already there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna
Um,
be a good time.
do we have anything else? Do you have a release date for the second EP? Is it another there's 2 other EPs, correct? They're
It's
coming
gonna
out?
be a so the next one I'm hoping that it's gonna be a full length. I'm still not sure on the song, on how many songs is gonna be on it, but I'm hoping for 8, so hoping to do a full length. Um, there isn't a release date yet, but I suspect sometime, mm, early next year.
And at Day End Records on Instagram to stay up to date with everything that they're doing. They got a good catalog of artists
Yeah,
local
yeah,
too. Um,
definitely.
Victoria, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna stop recording this and I'll talk to you in a minute, okay?
Yeah.